those of you considering voting for the Democratic Party, as someone who grew up in a very left-leaning family, I ask that you Democrat lights, or any of you still having doubts, to listen to my pitch to walk away, as did I. And while we will all lose very badly if Joe Biden is elected president and the Democrats take over Congress. For those of you who are already squarely voting red, please share this video so that the dystopian course that I will describe on which we are heading has a chance to be halted. The stark contrast. Today's Republicans champion liberties of the individual and self-reliance. They offer a vision of America that they acknowledge, while imperfect, has overall been a tremendous force for good in the world, and that we can change certain things to make our republic better. In stark contrast, the Democrats offer a dark view of the United States and a future for America that is being previewed, playing out on the city streets in real time right now. It's all part of the blue doom and gloom package. Let's take a look inside their playbook. COVID-19 lockdowns, shut in your homes, your children unable to play with their friends, to go to school, to learn, the accompanying depression for all members of the family, alcohol abuse, the increased addiction to opioids, and the economic collapse that is already causing world populations to starve. Given that I personally help keep a tiny subset of the poor souls not lucky enough to be born in America fed here in Asia, I can tell you not one of them has received a stimulus check or unemployment insurance. They wait in line beginning at 5 o'clock in the morning for a 1 p.m. distribution of food worth less than $3 per person.
Wow.
The opportunity cost of their time doesn't apply, as there is literally no economic opportunity available. Their businesses have been shuttered through no fault of their own, and their ability to maintain self-sufficiency has been taken away by fearful governments, exchanged for literal hunger. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That's all we ask, and it has turned into almost 8 months of malaise and despair. Small businesses, mandated by blue state governors to shut down, have seen their clientele forcibly transferred to the big box stores, which were given special provisions to stay open. Many of these mom and pop stores have closed permanently. All that effort, all that time, all that sweat equity for naught, because they were unlucky enough to live in a Democratic-run state. Tensions have been exacerbated across the nation between people, between races. And the Democrats advocate for continuing shutdowns even as we understand more about the disease, as our treatments become better, even as the death count drops. All for safety. What about living? The lost time. How much time do you think that we all have on this planet? What about the misery the lockdowns have caused? What about all the extra deaths from alcohol, drugs, and sadly, suicide? And as Joe Biden sells more lockdowns, Trump wants us to open up again, for us to be able to live, to prosper. Which reality going forward is more appealing? If you think that it's too risky, remember, no one lives forever. If someone desires to spend their time hunkered down in their home, never to see daylight, that's their prerogative to do so. But should the rest of the world stop living because a few snowflakes' hearts flutter wildly every time they hear the number 19? Encouraging the riots. The eternal lockdown has amplified riots, or as the mainstream media refer to them, mostly peaceful protests, actively encouraged by Democrats for political gain. Just one example, None other than Kamala Harris requested donations for the Minnesota Freedom Fund to bail rioters and looters out of jail so they could get back out onto the street and create peace at an ever-quickening rate. Antifa and BLM are rioting, looting businesses, committing arson, and making life unlivable with almost no repercussions. And yet, when pressed, the Democrats will tell you that Antifa is a myth.
There's violence across the whole country. Do you disavow the violence from Antifa that's happening in Portland right now? There's riots.
That's a myth that's being spread only in Washington, D.C.
About Antifa in Portland?
Yes.
Sir, there's videos everywhere online. There's fires and riots. They're throwing fireworks at federal officers. DHS is there.
Or an idea.
Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it.
Not militia.
Yet this idea has murdered people, destroyed businesses, set federal courthouses ablaze, torn down statues and our history, insulted and desecrated our religions. This idea will storm into neighborhoods at 3 o'clock in the morning with bullhorns yelling, "Wake up! Wake up, motherfucker, wake up! Wake up! Wake up, motherfucker, wake up!" This myth, this idea is supported from the highest echelons of the Democratic Party. Nancy Pelosi wondered why there weren't more uprisings. Ayanna Pressley actively urged for more unrest.
There needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives, and unfortunately, there's plenty to go around.
And the de facto editor of the New York Times, Hannah Nicole Jones, stated that naming the George Floyd riots the 1619 riots after her Pulitzer Prize winning essay, which was riddled with intentional falsehoods, would be an honor. Portland is the canary in the coal mine. There have been over 100 straight days of riots and destruction in Portland. Every night, the police take massive amounts of abuse. Some of them physically attacked. And rioters they arrest? Well, the city's Democratic district attorney, and also in other leftist jurisdictions, released almost all of them the following morning, with all charges dropped. Imagine owning a house that is actively being attacked by termites. The ones doing the most damage are manually removed, given over to what should be a pest control company, and the next morning they are carefully placed back into the wood of the house for ethical reasons. It's a joke. Portland's mayor, Ted Wheeler, says that he stands with the same group trying to destroy his city.
I stand with you no matter what. And if they launch the tear gas against you, they are launching the tear gas against me.
This is the mayor, and he demands that the president remove federal officers from the city so that the mob can finish the job of burning down the federal courthouse. Then, the same jovial Antifa group shows up at the mayor's residence demanding his resignation, and true to form, while there, they try to burn down the whole condominium building to the ground. And this coward, this utterly feckless leader, does not turn up the heat on them. He turns and runs away, moving out of his building while continuing to support them and denouncing the president for protecting the courthouse. Journalist Andy No, who they've already sent to the hospital with a brain injury, has graffiti painted in his honor daily on various buildings, imploring for his murder. This is not free speech. This is incitement to violence, to death. And by the way, Andy, he's a 5'5" gay man, son of Vietnamese immigrants. Such tolerance these people have. And yet the riots persist, ongoing daily, as they attempt to bully and threaten you into submission. New York City. In New York, the mayor shuts down businesses and religious gatherings, but green lights amidst the pandemic, amidst coronavirus, massive protests for the BLM, Black Lives Matter movement, which of course resulted in violence, damage, the loss of public property, and undoubtedly was a super spreader COVID event. Meanwhile, the same mayor rounds up and arrests Orthodox Jews for trying to hold services together. Hitler is smiling from hell. St. Louis. In St. Louis, if you dare to protect your property like the McCloskeys did by brandishing firearms against a group of mostly peaceful protesters, a group that has already broken down your gate and trespassed onto private property and are yelling violent threats at you, the county attorney will go out of her way to press charges against you. You know what it is? It's a warning, meant to silence those who would dare stand up against their authoritarian and illiberal movement. If, according to them, you are on the wrong moral side of the equation, you are not permitted to do so much as defend yourself. Question: which side of the aisle is trying to destroy the law and order which protects you, while making it all but impossible to legally protect yourself? The city of Minneapolis. The Minneapolis City Council voted 12-0 to abolish the police department. City Council President Lisa Bender went viral when she told CNN that calling the police when your home is broken into comes from a place of privilege.
What if, in the middle of the night, my home is broken into? Who do I call?
Yes, I mean, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors. And I know, and myself too, and I know that that comes from a place of privilege.
As Charles Barkley said, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? Meanwhile, as these left-leaning cities fall apart, as they teem with more and more homeless, packing and defecating onto their city streets, as crime surges, these insane people demand your submission to their vision. They know better than you, despite their visible results on full display for everyone. These people who only destroy and complain, not build and protect, think that they know better than everyone what is good for our country as their jurisdictions crumble. Cancel culture. You realize that in only one day last week, Antifa knocked out a black man's teeth for standing up for free speech in San Francisco. Trump supporters were fired upon with a shotgun by a BLM activist in Maryland. And in New Hampshire, letters were delivered to homeowners with Trump signs on their lawns, stating that they were marked for destruction should Trump not concede the election, and that they sincerely hoped that their home insurance has adequate protection from fire. Again, which side of the aisle do all these actions stem from? If you dare say or tweet something against the prevailing woke wisdom of the day, or even 10 years ago, they will find you, they will seek you out, they will demand your employer fires you, threatening them with boycotts, and tell your friends to drop you like a hot coal. How many lives have been ruined because of these cancel culture efforts? And yet the Democrats nod and encourage this behavior, this tearing of our civility and our social fabric. Real racism. The Democrats claim to be the party of tolerance, that they want to eradicate racism. Instead, they amplify the divisions in our society. They advocate for black-only dorms at universities, and that people of color need their own safe spaces. And for their persistent demands, they receive thunderous applause, not only from Democratic leaders, but the Ku Klux Klan, who are naturally in full support of their requests for segregation. Tell them that two-parent families yield superior results to single-parent families and get branded a racist. Say that America is the land of freedom and opportunity, and you've demonstrated your white privilege. That's only two of many examples I have personally experienced. I'm sure that many of you out there have similar stories. And brainwash our youth into racial animus is an absolute must. It's why they want critical race theory taught in elementary schools, and why the City of Seattle School Board declared math to be racist. Anti-racism is their religion, and if you have white skin, you've been born of original sin. your mere existence is proof of your guilt. To them, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, asking his children to be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, is a nightmare. I would never tell you that racism ever fully died, but it was on life support, kept alive by politicians, race hustlers, and people who get a sense of superiority by denouncing others as racists. Hello, Democrats. And with the left throwing fuel onto the racial fire, is there any doubt when they continually yell racist at you and use it as a cudgel to dislodge you from your job, from your friends, from your well-being, that it will invariably move people into the arms of white identity groups, if for no other reason than for personal protection? The media. The media is a vicious and partisan organization, which would be far more palatable if they didn't outright lie, like dragging the country through 3+ years of Russiagate, which turned out to be completely bunk, and then, other than Fox News, completely ignoring the Joe Biden, Hunter Biden email scandal and influence peddling, implicating Joe at the highest level of being indebted and manipulable by these foreign actors like China. The likes of CNN, the New York Times, and the Washington Post are so in the bag for Democrats, so anti-Trump, that they continually perpetuate known vile lies against the man. They'll quote only portions of Trump's statements, intentionally producing a toxic precipitate from a chemical reaction that should have been at worst harmless when shown with all its components, like full context. Two of the innumerable number of examples, the Fine People hoax.
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
That Joe Biden apparently based his campaign around, and stating that Latinos were animals when he was specifically referring to MS-13, the vile and vicious gang. The ends justify the means, being excuses for their felonious behavior. Our liberties. The First Amendment, the bedrock of our democracy, unearthed by our founders, which allows us to settle our differences peacefully by speaking freely to one another, thus making violence much less likely. This is what truly undergirds our republic. The Democrats want to chip away at it, starting with hate speech laws. It's not that I'll deny the fact that there isn't such a thing as hate speech, but I absolutely loathe to look into the eyes of those who desire to define exactly what that is. For much, like most of the left, I'm certain I'll see enmity and hatred masked by supposed empathy. Much as they find racism under every rock and in every nook and cranny, the same will certainly be true of hate speech. They'd love to overturn the Second Amendment as they try to abolish the police or lower morale so that they quit in mass bursts. They want to take away our privilege of being able to call law enforcement if our home is invaded, while simultaneously removing our rights to defend ourselves. This is so that they can institute their totalitarian whims unopposed. And now let's get to Donald Trump. Say what you will about Trump's personality. The man is far from perfect. But his policies have brought us peace in the Middle East. He sent Iran's ambitions for Middle East hegemony into a tailspin, whereas the former administration, which of course included Joe Biden, sent the mullahs of Iran literally plane loads of US cash, which they used subsequently to fund their terrorist activities. Peace deals that have never existed before with Israel have been signed. For the first time, direct flights from the United Arab Emirates to Tel Aviv can be purchased. No new wars have been started, and the economy was thriving until COVID-19 visited the world stage. likely courtesy of the Chinese laboratory. But as votes pour in for blue, from all those who have been brainwashed by the media into Trump derangement syndrome, as the Democrats advocate abolishing the Electoral College, the packing of the Supreme Court, and the dissolution of our republic, the Democrats believe the more dependent on the state you are, the more power they will reap. They use the excuse of unequal distribution of wealth within the world's richest country as an excuse to destroy that which others have built so that we are all equally miserable. They desire to deprive you of your liberty to express yourself, lest you say something that would trigger the psyche of the lowest common denominator, or merely add friction to their power grab. My hope is that hearing and knowing this sends you running from their cold embrace. And even right now, you know that they are threatening that if Donald Trump wins, they will literally attempt to burn down America. They are attempting to terrorize you into submission. We are Americans, and we will not be scared. We will not be cudgeled by a subset of our population that wishes to destroy our republic. Let us do it, or else. When they say submit, we fight back. This is America after all, not France. This is what you are voting for if you vote Democrat, making it clear that their antics, that their behavior will pay off in spades and will return them to power. It's like giving a petulant child keys to the Ferrari in an effort to stop him momentarily from destroying your neighbor's property. What's going to happen to your Ferrari? What is going to happen to America, the great engine of liberty and freedom for the world? If you give them the reins of power, the keys to the Ferrari, they will do all they can to drive our nation over the cliff. Vote red like our republic depends on it, because it does. And remember, I've been a lifelong Democrat up until now. Walk away now before it's too late, before the Democrats walk all over our flag. Please share this video. Please get the word out there. Please make people aware. That's the only thing I ask. Peace out. God bless. America, its existence is wonderful for the world. Peace.